أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Thank you for that introduction, and also thank you to the Institute of Islamic Services, their leadership, and the Sheikh, the Imam of the Mosque, for allowing me the opportunity of using the platform of the Minbar to talk. And with that comes the important responsibility of being mindful of what one says. So yes, I will be speaking to the topic, the importance of skills development in South Africa to achieve economic freedom. Now, this is a vital topic, and I'm pleased that we are looking at it, but also it requires a more broader perspective of not just looking at skills development as a technical exercise, but rather as an eminently human exercise. So I will be talking a little bit around that. I've been looking at the contextual issues because that's important, but I'll also be looking at what really interests me as a human being, which is who am I, what am I here for in this world, where am I going to? Of course, we all know that our purpose in life is what Allah says in chapter 67 verse 2, that I have created you to do good. So when one looks at skills development and when one looks at lifelong learning, one has to ask oneself who benefits with this exercise of seeking skills. So yes, it's vital that we know that there are three types of democracies. One democracy is political democracy, which we were on a high in 1994, and we have declined with the political democracy. We must learn to be straightforward, but we have to make sure that we do not sink to the level of fitna. So when we're looking at political democracy and we see the endemic corruption that is around us, it is most disheartening, but it is your responsibility to make sure that you break the silence. When we look at cultural democracy, we see that even that is not actually being promoted constitutionally. You still get people arguing that Muslim boys who have beards are not following the code of conduct of the school. And you still get schools arguing that when young Muslim women wear their hijab, that they're not allowed to because that's not part of the school code. Now that's unconstitutional, so we've got to break our silence on that as well. Now comes the topic of discussion, which is economic democracy. Now you and I know that we can't feed people on slogans, and yet that is what we get all around us. So economic democracy is therefore a vital concept to focus on. And I'm very enamored and encouraged by the work of the Institute of Islamic Services, who must be commended for their skills development focus, including over the years, as I've noticed, the training of unemployed people as plumbers, as electricians, including early childhood development, and also now recently a course on health and beauty. You should actually really support the Institute of Islamic Services for their focus on not just feeding people, which is important, but also on empowering people with short skills courses. So of course these courses actually spark economic democracy at a micro level. So then what is this the concept of unemployment? Well, you get to know about it when you are hungry and when you haven't eaten anything for the day. It's a situation where a person actively searches for employment. So I give the benefit of the doubt where the person actually goes out to search for employment but is unable to find the work. And so unemployment is considered to be a key measure of the health of the economy. So the greater the unemployment, as I'll show you later on, the greater the concern social concerns must be. So then what is the problem of unemployment in South Africa? Well, many people are looking for work, and you'll be shocked to know that 44% of people are unemployed in South Africa. So even as you are seated there and listening to me, you should actually be saying a silent shukr to Allah for the fact that you have food to eat every day. 44%, and the attendant backwash effect systemically on that is socially, and it destroys social cohesion and social solidarity. So the unemployment rate in South Africa, we are actually almost at the bottom of the run of 82 countries in the world. So if I then look at the unemployment rate, again I'm repeating, but for the sake of emphasis, that as you are seated there, make shukr to Allah that you are well fed, that you have a house, that you have a roof over your head. There are hungry people out there. There are people who are suicidal out there. There are people who are desperately trying. So you have to give them the benefit of the doubt for looking at employment. In fact, in the second quarter of 2022, there was a further 1.4% decline in employment. So when you see an unemployed person, say to yourself, there but for the grace of Allah, go out. And so, so what might be some of the causes of this unemployment? Well, people, and I think there is some truth in this, people. And Jamaatul don't feel that it is now 27 years after apartheid and you can't blame apartheid. Well, some systemic and structural issues are still to be blamed for this legacy of apartheid, where there was poor education, Bantu education, where people were used of wood and drawers of water. And the biggest concern for me is the mismatch between the demand that the economy wants and the supply of skilled workers. Now you have many young people saying that, oh, I put in so much effort into my studies, but I still didn't get the marks. Well, let me tell you, the bad news is you don't get marks for effort. You only get marks for what you are competent in, for what you have mastered. You don't go to a doctor who doesn't know on which side the heart is at. Neither do you go to a specialist who doesn't know his craft. So there's also a general global recession. You have to think about this very carefully. I advise you, be very careful how you spend your money, or more likely how you waste your money. Rather think about giving some of your money to the down and out and the poor. And there's also a general slow economic growth. So yes, many people need to think about their habits of mind and their ways of thinking. And if you look at what the Quran says around it, you'll be interested to know that we are not allowed to beg. And we are not allowed to actually do a cap in hand type thing. And so the Quran repeatedly, and for want of time, I'm not able to give you any of my citations, but the Quran asks us not to be sad, to be optimistic, to have faith in Allah, that something good will come, to be flexible in our approach. Tomorrow is another day, try again, look for work. You have to be resilient, and you have to have empathy and self-respect. So these are some of the things that the Quran actually, the habits of mind and the ways of thinking that the Quran encourages. It says you must persist, you mustn't give up hope, and you must learn to be a job creator rather than a job seeker. And you must take responsibility for your life. But more importantly, you must reflect on who am I, and where am I going to, and what am I here for. So then, the biggest cause of unemployment is, in fact, the massive skills mismatch. So we have many people who are plumbers, but meanwhile the industry requires IT specialists. Right now in Africa, there's a need for some 750,000 IT specialists. So that you have a very important skill that I can share with you. A business skill is that if you want to create a good business, apply the rule of there are riches in niches. The niche market is where you need to look at and find out where is the greatest need. And that's where you go in pursuit of your studies, and that's where you empower yourself. And in a complex society like ours, where we still have to close the gap between the underclass, and in the majority happen to be Black, African, and poor, we still haven't addressed that issue well enough. If you see yourself, rather than as human, but if you see yourself as a minority person, then the best advice I can give you is make yourself indispensable to Caesar. In other words, you've got to be so competent and so good at what you are doing that people are forced to come to you. And the only way to do that is through study. And the only way to do that is through empowering yourself. There is no shortcut. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what job you are in. But if you are in pursuit of knowledge, it is no mistake, Jamaatul Mu'minin, that Allah's first revelation in a cave, not in a multi-million rand structure, was read in the name of the Lord that has created you. So what does that tell us? It's not just reading, the technical exercise of reading, but it's also the exercise of making sure that you are able to read the world. And all the time you need to ask yourself, who am I, where am I going to, and what am I here for? You might be interested to know that the city with the most unemployment is Nelson Mandela Bay or the old Port Elizabeth area, the highest unemployment rate. And interestingly enough, the city with the lowest unemployment rate is in Cape Town. So I'm giving it as a fact. I'm not passing any judgment. And also the province with the highest unemployment rate is Gauteng. And yet we are one of the richest. We are the economic hub. So mismanagement, and also the fact that people are not analyzing what the greatest needs are. If you'll excuse my gainsaying and ego, about 3 years ago, I had presented a paper to government on where are the greatest skills shortages. And we presented that to the state. But as in most things, sadly and regrettably, it wasn't taken seriously. There is no coordination. So the best way we can control unemployment is through using labor-intensive technology. We need to also look at food security. Why are people afraid to go into farming? There's a huge scope there in farming. And therefore, something for the Institute to look at, to create a course on food security. We need to also consider that by 2030, certain professions will be outdated. So therefore, the habits of mind that the Quran is encouraging is your being a lifelong learner, as for you to actually improve yourself, to beat the unemployment. And so, improve your skills, go for short courses, and make sure that you are a master at what you are doing. So you make yourself indispensable. Do your research, improve your CV, and make sure that you have the X factor. The X factor includes such things as persistence, excellence in what you are doing, carrying yourself with dignity wherever you are, and be mindful of empathy, of listening well, of not being afraid to ask, and lastly, of not being afraid to sweep the floor and not being afraid to wash the floor. To be able to say to the person, I'm prepared to do this, I'm prepared to do that, go beyond the call of duty. So in sum then, there is a basic income grant, and yes, many people, especially those who are secure, and especially those who have a roof over their head, especially those who are well-fed, they would like to self-righteously say, oh, look at this queues. You know, people are just standing in the queues and collecting their basic income grant. Don't be arrogant. Don't be full of yourself. Understand that that person standing there is but for the grace of God. And don't be full of yourself, because that person standing there will have 400 rand or whatever. At least it will help with some stability in the country. So yes, we can't just simply advocate for job creation, because, you know, I recognize your hand, Yusuf is my conscience. He reminds me when I must stop talking. So I will tie up in this sense now, Yusuf, with respect to you. So yes, we can't just talk about job creation glibly. There's a lot of structural inequalities to date still. We are not a poor country, we are a rich country, we are not a penny-halfpenny state. But with a rampant corruption and with the overtaxing of people, your voice must be heard, and you must help people to empower themselves and to gain the necessary skills. So I'm hoping that I haven't made anyone sad, but I'm hoping that what I've said will make us realize that the issue of skills development to promote economic democracy is a complex issue. It is actually more than just getting that piece of paper. It's teaching people the skills of making sure that they strive, that they persist, that they are inventive, that they are creative, that they are not afraid of taking risks. So thank you again for this opportunity of sharing my thoughts with you. I pray that Allah grants all of you and your family and your children and their children's children the ability to have a good job that will be in the employ of Allah. And you know what that means? That you mustn't forget to pay your zakat, that you mustn't forget to look after the poor, that you mustn't forget to thank Allah. So skills development is connected to all of those things. It's not just a technical thing of getting your piece of paper. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks for the opportunity.